Good day to you all. We will be speaking about stewardship as a way of life in this talk. But we preface it with what Pope Francis told us in Evangelii Gaudium, and I quote, "Pastoral ministry in a missionary key seeks to abandon the complacent attitude that says, we have always done it this way. I invite everyone to be bold and creative in this task of rethinking the goals, structures, style, and methods of evangelization in their respective communities." This talk is a response to what the Pope is asking us, to be bold and creative in rethinking our ways. So here, one way of evangelizing that we think is important for our Philippine church is stewardship. And this would mean a lot of changes in the way we think, in the way we live our lives, and in the way we approach our work of ministry. Let us not be tied down to what we have been doing before. Let us accept the challenge of the Pope. We have just finished our celebration of the 500th anniversary of the coming of the Christian faith. And we have been guided by our theme for 2021, Gifted to Give. We believe that every grace is not only a privilege, but also a responsibility. And the more we are gifted, the more we are challenged to share this gift. We recognize the gift. Here, the gift of faith, but all kinds of gifts that we have, we recognize that they are gifts given to us. And so we are grateful for the gifts of God because of His love for us. But we realize that these gifts are not just only for us. So we share the gift. We share the gift to others. And the more we share, the more we grow in love. This is the logic of what we are proposing that we do during this time for the spirituality of stewardship. We recognize our giftedness. We are grateful for these gifts. We share these gifts to others and thus grow in love. Since the year 2000, stewardship as a concept and as a program is becoming mainstream in the practice of the faith. Before that, we have seen stewardship and limited it only to the care of creation. But then, with the series of talks about stewardship in the Philippine church, we realized that all aspects of our life are under this concept of stewardship. Who is a steward? A steward is someone entrusted to hold something in trust for another person. Siya ay hindi may-ari. Pinagkatiwalaan siya ng may-ari. And dahil sa pinagkatiwalaan siya, siya ngayon ang nagmamanage ng pag-aaring ito. So, a steward is not only entrusted, but also who manages the property of another. And our Catechism for the Catholic Church tells us in number 2402, In the beginning, God entrusted the earth and its resources to the common stewardship of mankind, to take care of them, master them by labor, and enjoy the fruits. The goods of creation are destined for the whole human race. So from the very beginning, from creation itself, we as human beings have been entrusted with the stewardship of all the things that God has created so that we may work on them, enjoy the fruits, and bring them, these fruits, to all the others. There are some basic concepts behind being a steward. Very basic concept. The steward is not the owner. Tayo'y katiwala. Hindi tayo ang may-ari. Pangalawa, the steward has responsibility. He manages what has been entrusted to him. Pinagkatiwala sa kanya. At dahil sa ang may-ari ang napakatiwala sa kanya, that's why the steward has to manage the things entrusted to him according to what the owner wants. Kasi hindi kanya, kahit na siya ang nagpapalakad ng mga bagay-bagay na ito, isinasang-ayon niya ang kanyang pamamalakad sa gusto ng may-ari. Kasi bandang huli, siya po ay mananagot sa may-ari. He will answer to the owner. These are all basic concepts about being a steward. And we have been entrusted with the stewardship of life, stewardship of creation, the goods of the earth, stewardship of time, stewardship of health, stewardship of vocation, stewardship of our own duties in life, stewardship of the things that we own, the material things that we have. Ang lahat pong ito ay pinagkakatiwala sa atin. We read in Deuteronomy chapter 10, verse 14, "Look, the heavens and even the highest heavens belong to the Lord, your God, as well as the earth and everything on it." Lahat ang Diyos ang may-ari. Also in 1 Chronicles chapter 29, verse 11 to 12, "Yours, Lord, are greatness and might, majesty, victory, and splendor, for all the heavens and on earth is yours. Yours, Lord, is kingship. You are exalted as head over all. Riches and glory are from you, and you have dominion over all. In your hand are power and might. It is yours to give greatness and strength to all." Kaya kinikilala po natin, galing sa banal na kasulatan, na lahat na nandiyan ay galing sa Diyos. That's why God is the owner of all by creation. All comes from Him. But not only that, God is also the owner of all by redemption. He redeemed all. So we read in 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 19 to 20, "Do you not know that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit within you, whom you have from God, and that you are not your own? For you have been purchased at a price. Therefore, glorify God in your body." So God has a double claim of ownership over us, by creation and by redemption. Kaya kinikilala po natin na siya ang may-hari. Now we look at stewardship as a way of life. Isang uri ng pamamaraan. It is a spirituality. Yan po isang pakikitungo sa buhay, isang pananaw sa buhay. That's why we cannot reduce towards stewardship to only just an activity or a practice. Not because we tithe, we are already good stewards. But it's the way that we live our life. It is the way that we see how our life is. That's why it covers all the aspect of our life. Not only our money. It covers how we live our life, how we spend our time, how we take care of our family, how we do our jobs, how we live our faith. All of these are in the prism of stewardship, if we take it as a way of life. And what does a steward do? Of course, a steward takes care of what has been entrusted to him or to her. We take care. And what does it mean to take care? That means that it will not be wasted. Hindi po masasayang, hindi po mawawala. Sinisikap natin na pinagkatiwala sa atin ay hindi masisira, ay hindi masasayang. Instead, that it is put to good use for self and for others. Ginagamit po, hindi lang binabaon para sa sarili at para sa iba. And in so doing, in making use of these that had been entrusted to us, we return it with increase to the Lord. These things are being developed. Anumang talents natin kapag ginagamit ay nadidevelop. Ang buhay natin na ginagamit para sa iba ay lumulusog, ay nagiging makabuluhan. And a steward is aware that he will give an account. That's why he is transparent kung ano ang ginamit niya sa kanyang panahon, paano niya ginamit. Ang pinagkatiwala sa kanya, pananagutan niya yan sa may-ari. At dahil sa hindi nga siya ang may-ari, ibinibigay na rin ang kaparte ng may-ari. Pinapagamit sa kanya, nakikinabang siya sa mga bagay na pagkatiwala, kaya magbibigay din siya ng kaparte ng may-ari bilang pagkilala na siya ang may-ari. That's why if we want to summarize the spirituality of stewardship, we can put this into 4 elements. First is the recognition and acceptance of God's gifts. Kinikilala natin at tinatanggap natin ang mga biyaya ng Diyos. Nakakalungkot po, maraming mga biyaya na hindi tinatanggap. Tulad ng biyaya ng pagiging anak ng Diyos. Bakit hindi natin tinatanggap ito o hindi natin alam? So we recognize and we accept God's gifts. Second, we are grateful to God. Nagpapasalamat tayo sa biyaya ito. Nagpapasalamat tayo sa oras na ibinigay niya sa atin, sa ating kalusugan, sa ating buhay, sa ating pamilya. Pinasasalamat natin sa Diyos sa ating kaalaman. And thirdly, that we trust in God, that He takes care of us. Marami nang pinikatiwala sa atin. Hindi tayo pababayaan. Kaya may tiwala tayo sa Diyos kasi pinagkatiwalaan tayo. And precisely because we trust in God, so fourthly, we are generous. We are generous in sharing these gifts. Kasi hindi natin inaangkin. At alam natin na ang Diyos na nagmamahal sa atin, hindi tayo pababayaan. And in this generosity, we grow in our love for God. So ito po yung 4 na elements ng spirituality. Recognition and acceptance of the gift. Pangalawa, gratitude to God for these gifts. Pangatlo, tiwala sa Diyos, hindi tayo pababayaan, nananalig tayo sa Kanya. At dahil sa nananalig tayo sa Kanya, tayo po ay generous na magbahagi sa mga biyayang ito. Kasi hindi tayo iiwanan ng Diyos. So we grow in love. You know, stewardship is different from fundraising. Ang iba kasi ang tingin nila, stewardship is just another way of fundraising. No. There are great differences between fundraising activities and stewardship. Fundraising is what we do. Stewardship is who we are. Malaking bagay niyon. Hindi lang yan isang gawain na ginagawa natin kung nagpapakila kung sino ba tayo. Ano ba tayo? Tayo ay mga katiwala. Fundraising is one-dimensional, impacting only people's pockets. Kaya bastang nagbigay ka ng tulong, yan, tinutugunan mo na yung fundraising. But stewardship invites us to a change of heart. Pagbabago ng pananaw, pagbabago ng puso. Hindi lang yan pagbibigay ng pera. So in fundraising, we can give a big amount, but still we remain as we are in our attitudes. Ngunit ang stewardship, nagbabago ang ating pananaw. And fundraising only occurs occasionally, kapag may pangangailangan. Kailangan natin ng bagong simbahan, kailangan natin sa mga nasalanta ng bagyo, kaya mag-fundraise tayo occasionally. Whereas stewardship is an ongoing commitment. May pangangailangan man o wala, ako'y magbibigay kasi ako ay steward. That's why it's an ongoing commitment. So stewardship is not something we do. It's about who we are and whose we are. Ano ba tayo? At kanino ba tayo? So nagbabago yung ating pananaw, yung ating pagtingin, yung ating pakikitungo sa buhay. Hindi lang yan isang bagay na ginagawa natin, ngunit yan po ay ang ating pananaw kung ano tayo at sino tayo. Sino ba ang may-ari ng lahat ng ito? That's why we say that stewardship is a way of life rather than a single particular action. It's a way of life. The life of stewardship is an ongoing process of integrating whereby we relate our whole person to the whole action of God. Ini-integrate natin, isinasama natin, tinitingnan natin, kinikilala natin ang ating buhay, ang ating pagkilos sa pagkilos ng Diyos. By acknowledging our dependence upon God for all life, we are called to regard both material things, human capacities, and spiritual resources not as private possession or as a property of limited groups, but all of these are coming from God. Yan po yung pananaw na yan. That they're always aware na nagdidepende tayo sa Diyos. Lahat ay galing sa Kanya. Kaya palagi tayo nagpapasalamat. Palagi tayong nagbabahagi. Kasi ang binabahagi natin ay galing sa may-ari mismo. So, stewardship cannot just be limited to good intentions and kind deeds. Some particular aspects of our life na mabait tayo, tumutulong tayo, but it's recognizing that all of life depends on God. That we belong to God. Kaya nga spirituality ito. Ito po'y pananaw sa ating buhay. Na kinikilala natin na lahat na mayroon tayo ay galing sa Diyos. Nagpapasalamat po tayo sa Social Pastoral Institute, SPI, na noon po ay pinangunuhan, itinatag at pinangunuhan ni Bishop Julio Labayen. And with the support of St. Thomas More Parish of Denver, that several conferences on stewardship have been offered to the bishops of the Philippines, to the CBCP, and to many priests and lay leaders. Mula po noong taong 2003, 2004 ay ginawa na yan. All of this with the aim in mind of supporting the Church of the Poor and living the life of discipleship. Kaya nga inintroduce itong spirituality of stewardship. It's a spirituality that has been introduced in order that we may support and maintain our being Church of the Poor and our living as disciples of Jesus Christ. Kaya hindi po natin ma-disengage ang spirituality of stewardship with the Church of the Poor and our life as disciples of the Lord. And being Church of the Poor, we are confirmed about this by no less than Pope Francis himself. And recently, Pope Francis affirmed our program to be Church of the Poor when he openly said several times since the beginning of his papacy, I want a church that is poor, a church that is for the poor. Kaya sana makikita natin our being Church of the Poor is not a sign of weakness, but it is who we are as church. Church of the poor and church for the poor. Yan po sinabi ng Santo Papa, which means a church which embraces and practices the spirit of evangelical poverty, the poverty of the gospel. And the poverty of the gospel, blessed are the poor, Jesus says, combines detachment from possessions with profound trust in the Lord. Kaya nga, hindi na tayo naghahanap ng kayamanan lang. Kasi alam natin, ang Diyos natin ay mapagkakatiwalaan. That's why it means simplicity of life. The Church of the Poor does not discriminate against the poor, but vindicates their rights. Hindi natin isinasantabi ang mga mahirap. Silang ginagawa natin ng sentro ng ating concern at nating activities at ipinagtatanggol ang kanilang mga karapatan. So the Pope said in Evangelii Gaudium, a church which gives preferential attention and time for the poor. And the Pope said very clearly, our preferential option for the poor must mainly translate into a privileged and preferential religious care for them. So, yan po yung ibig sabihin ng Church of the Poor. Na kaya nga, isinusulong natin ang spirituality of stewardship in order that we may be able to work as Church of the Poor. We're able to share our resources for activities of the poor. So what would be the result of the spirituality of stewardship? That we are able to live a way of life, a way of being church as stewards. Ang result po ay, first, we become more grateful. Kasi a real steward recognizes the gifts of God, is grateful to the gifts of God. And gratitude is a basic attitude of a Christian in life. This is part of our discipleship. This is why for us Catholics, the primary worship is Eucharist, which is thanksgiving for the gift of salvation and for all the other gifts that God gives us. So by having the outlook of a steward, we become more grateful in our life and thus being more happy. Another result of stewardship is greater generosity. Maging mapagbigay tayo. Our response to God's goodness to us is greater generosity in sharing. We are told in the Bible, as each has received a gift, employ it for one another as good stewards of God's varied grace. We recognize the gift. We use it not just for ourselves but for others. And in this way, we become God's steward. So we become more generous. Another result of stewardship as a way of life, we become responsible for the use of the things given to us, and we become more transparent in accounting for them. Because we know that as stewards, we'll be accountable to God and to the community in which we exercise the stewardship. Hence, spirituality promotes transparency and responsibility in our use of resources, including material resources. Kaya hindi na natin itatago ang pera ng simbahan. Pera ng lahat yan. At pananagutan natin sa Diyos. At pananagutan natin sa ating simbahan, sa ating kapwa. Ganon din po, how we use our own time. We become more transparent and more responsible in the use of our time and all the other resources that we have. And because of this, that we become more responsible, more generous, more transparent, there can be more services by the church, especially services for the poor. With more people involved, because they realize that we are stewards of our time, of our talents, and with more contribution in terms of talents and treasure, more services and programs can be done for the poor and to reach out to those in the peripheries. Ngayon po, parang napipigilan tayo sa ating pagtulong sa mga mahirap kasi wala namang magtatrabaho. Kasi wala naman tayong pera. But if we open up this generosity because we realize that we are stewards, there will be more services that we can give, more resources that we can offer to the people around us. So we need to be converted to be more sharing and not consider resources as ours, individually, as a religious community, as a parish, as a diocese. Parang atin lang, amin lang. But to be more generous with with the things that we have. And therefore, more people can share in these resources. That's why this is a call of conversion to all. Kaya talaga ang pinakakalaban natin dito yung pananaw na akin ito, amin ito, at para lang sa amin. So with stewardship, we realize that everything belongs to God. And what belongs to God belongs to all. Ngayon, tayo ang pinapahawak, tayo ang pinagkatiwalaan ng mga resources na ito, na para sa lahat. Kaya kung saan may pangangailangan, handa tayong i-share ito. So we become more open and not be parochial in our own thoughts. Isa po yung magiging resulta ng ating pagiging steward. So what we promote is a way of life. And a way of life means that we do this regularly. As a commitment, not only from time to time. A way of life, stewardship of time. Give time to connect with the owner. So to pray, if we realize that we are just but stewards, And God is the owner. We have to connect with the owner para malaman natin ano yung gusto niya. We have to grow in faith in order to go back to the source from where all of this comes from. Kaya mahalaga yung stewardship of time. Do we give enough time? Do we give quality time in our relationship with God? Kaya if we promote stewardship of time, we will have more people praying, more people regularly studying the Bible, more people staying in the Blessed Sacrament, praying the Rosary, going to Mass. May malaking pagbabagong mangyayari sa simbahan. Just by promoting the stewardship of time, that we realize that all our life, all our time belongs to God, and we give part of it back to God. That we are always in touch with the owner to know what He wants, how we are to use our time, our talents, our treasures. Pangalawa, stewardship of talent. We recognize our gifts and share these gifts to others. Lahat naman tayo may kanya-kanyang talent. Yun yung problema kung minsan di natin recognize ang talent at sayang. Like for example, we recognize the giftedness of being able to study, na nakapag-aral tayo. At gusto naman nating magbahagi ng napag-aralan natin sa iba. Ang iba ay talagang mag-talent na magluto, na magtanim, na magbasa, na mag-business. May talents tayo. We recognize and we develop these talents and we share them to others. Alam niyo kung ganito ang mangyayari, marami ang magsiserve sa atin at dami nating pangangailangan. Siguro may mga doctors tayo magsiserve, may mga lawyers, may mga teachers, no, may mga police people who will serve us. At binabahagi ang kanilang kaalaman. At ang magpapadaloy ng simbahan ay hindi lang iilang mga tao na sila na ang lahat. Madali po nating magamit ang mga resources natin kasi marami pong gusto mag-volunteer. And if we just do this, the church will become more alive in our ministries. Marami tayong pangangailangan na dapat tugunan at nandiyan yung mga tao willing to join because they recognize that what they have comes from God and should be used to serve others. And then stewardship of treasure. Give a portion of the material things that we have to God and to others. At kapag ganito, kahit na maliliit lang ang maibibigay natin, makakatulong sa lahat. Hindi naman that somebody will shoulder the whole amount, but every one of us would share. At hindi po mahirap. Isipin natin kung lahat lang ng mga Katoliko magbigay ng 20 pesos a week. 20 pesos a week, hindi naman mahirap ang 20 pesos. Pero malaking maitutulong yan kung lahat ay magbibigay ng kanyang 20 pesos. And regularly. Yan po yung sinasabi nating balik handog. Kinikilala natin ang handog ng Diyos at ibinabalik natin sa balik handog ang ating panahon, ang ating talento, ang ating kayamanan. Yan po yung pagbabalik handog natin. So because it is a way of life, maging regular na yan na ginagawa natin. Because it is a way of life, it becomes now a commitment that we have. And you know, by doing this, we grow in gratitude, we grow in love, we grow in trust. No, trusting the Lord for all the things that He has given us. And as a parish, as a Christian community, ito po yung isang service na maibibigay natin sa mga tao. that we make people realize, being aware of their being stewards. So make them know the real identity as human beings. Ano ba sila? As human beings. As human beings, we've been entrusted with the care of creation by the Creator. Kaya identity natin yan. As human beings, stewards tayo. Kaya dapat yan ay palaging ipaalam sa mga tao. At pangalawa, make them aware of their being blessed. Na ang dami nating mga biyaya. Kasi ang madalas po, nakikita natin yung mga bagay na wala tayo. Hindi na natin nakikita yung mga bagay na mayroon tayo. Na ako'y may kalusugan, na ako'y may pamilya, na ako'y may kaibigan, na ako'y nakapag-aral, na ako'y may trabaho. So, we are grateful for this. So, we promote generosity, we promote gratitude for all these gifts. And because we realize that we are blessed so much, then we can become generous. Hindi na tayo natatakot na mag-share. Kasi alam natin na hindi naman tayo papabayaan na ng Diyos. God has been so good to us, so we're able to share. And in so doing, we grow in love. We grow in love of God. At hindi ba yan naman talagang tungkulin ng simbahan na dalhin ang mga tao sa pagmamahal sa Diyos? Kaya ito po ang serbisyo na maibibigay ng simbahan. By promoting the spirituality of stewardship, by promoting stewardship as a way of life. Time and again, we are reminded of who we are as stewards. We belong to God. Everything comes from Him. We realize how much we are blessed with so many things that He has entrusted to us. And so we become grateful. By being grateful, we trust Him all the more and we become generous. Thus grow in our love for Him. Magkadugtong po ang lahat na yan. Sinabi po ng US bishops nung sila'y gumawa ng pastoral letter on stewardship as disciples of Christ. Sinabi po nila, as Christian stewards, we receive God's gifts gratefully, cultivate them responsibly, share them in loving justice with others, and return them with increase to the Lord. Yan po yung apat na magiging bahagi ng ating spirituality Christian stewardship. We receive God's gifts gratefully. Kinikilala natin at grateful tayo. We cultivate them kasi binigay ng Diyos. Ginagamit natin, inaalagaan natin, hindi natin sinasayang, hindi natin isinasantabi. And we share them in loving justice with others. Loving justice kasi ang iba ay may karapatan din sa mga gifts na yan. Tandaan natin, tayo lang yung daluyan. Tayo lang yung kamay upang ang biyaya ng Diyos ay dumating sa iba. Hindi atin yan at hindi lang para sa atin. We are just channels of God's love and God's graces for all. And by so doing, we return them with increase to the Lord. Increase kasi marami na kinabang. Increase kasi ito'y nakatulong sa lahat. Kaya mga kapatid, ipagpatuloy po natin itong ating commitment as God's stewards. It's a way of life.